I'm a black man trying not to get caught. I'm just trying to solve the puzzle like a jigsaw. You know it's a big world, so easy to get lost. I'm just trying to solve the puzzle like a jigsaw.
What's good, people? And welcome to another episode of the Jigsaw. Welcome to all of my people, my countrymen, my city dwellers, everybody in between, saints and ain'ts, and all of my friends. Welcome to the Jigsaw. You know what it is. It is a podcast where we come together and journey and try to navigate through life's craziest puzzle piece, and that is the jigsaw of life. How y'all doing out there? I know that it is another week of a pandemic, another week of social unrest, another week of just sheer craziness. But I also believe that 2020 is a year that can be used for our good. I refuse to curse it. I refuse to say it's a year from hell and all of the other things that I've heard about it. Why? Because we serve a God that can turn the most crazy and like stuff that we just cannot comprehend. Just he can turn it into something that is absolutely beautiful, absolutely amazing. I mean, 2020 is the year that brought us this podcast, so I refuse to completely talk bad about it, but I do recognize the reality of all the challenges, I'll say it that way, that 2020 has brought. And I bring that up and I acknowledge that to ask this: how are you? Are you implementing self-care? Are you doing the things that are necessary? All of the things that are necessary to make sure that you are good. One of those things is something that we talked about, right? And that is answering questions with the full answer of no, right? Right. So if you have not gotten it down pat, no worries. It is something that we sometimes have to learn because all of us are not as well versed in saying no. But again, that is what this podcast is about. It's about growing and developing and figuring things out. And as a matter of fact, let me say it so that I can officially start the podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about the perils, the praises, the productivity, and the pomp and circumstance of being a Black millennial in America. So we're going to talk with, we have an amazing episode lined up. It's a lot of stuff that happened. As far as self-care, going a little bit further back, for me personally, I was able to take some time, do a road trip. Don't trip. We were super safe. I went from one quarantine home to another. I did a road trip to Memphis, Tennessee, and I was able to visit my parents and my sisters and my nieces and nephews and my in-laws and a granny and all that different kind of stuff. And I ate real good. My grandma sent me here with an entire homemade caramel cake, and I am just digging through it. My mama cooked for me every night. I know that I've gained weight. I know that I have missed my dietary marks, but that is okay. It was all worth it to be loved on and to see family and to just be rejuvenated in such a way, right? In such a way that was a blessing for me. This year has been one of great interest, of also uncertainty. It's literally been the year, like what the podcast talks about. I'm really trying to navigate my way through it and trying to figure out what is next, right? I've heard a lot of promises. I've had some things that have been very promising or that looked like they were going to pan out and then ended up not happening. So I mean, it's just been a lot. And I believe that for whatever reason, it is something that is necessary for me to go through and to acknowledge, and being home kind of helped recenter me. Right when my anxiety was about to go straight through the roof, being home and being around family and being in a different place of a change of scenery, right? And just being surrounded, not that I don't love my wife and my children don't give me love and support, but just having that extra embrace of family, that homegrown kind of roots, and reestablishing myself and my familiarity with those roots was something that was super necessary and refreshing and rejuvenating. And I was able to catch up with at least two of my closest friends, my line brother and one of my best friends, while I was there. And I couldn't see everybody, didn't even attempt to see everybody, was not even apologetic about seeing everybody because I had no intent to see everyone. We are still in a pandemic and I did not want to surround myself. But for the few people who I was able to see, super excited to see them, to catch up, to see their faces. And that was just something great. We made it back. We are safe. We are still Rona free. And we are back, and now we're planning to figure out what in the world a school year is going to look like without two children. But those are my issues. And I'm sure I got parents on here who are low-key stressing about what they're going to be doing with their kids as well. But that's neither here nor there. Before we jump into this week's episode, I do want to take the pause of the calls and handle a little business and ask you all to please engage and follow me on social media. You can follow me personally if you want, but more importantly, you can follow the podcast at the Jigsaw Podcast on Instagram. You can write us. You can write in Bless Up Report, Black, on the Bless Up Report, we do Black business shout outs and all that different kind of stuff and great things that people are doing. So shout out your bro, shout out your sis, submit it to me. I will read them. I will give them the recognition that they're due. You can submit your rant for doing a greater conversation, all of that different kind of stuff. Or you can just submit a question or a concern or something that you want advice or a different perspective on, all of that. Do all of that by emailing us at thejigsawpodcast@gmail.com, and I will respond accordingly. And then if you're listening to this on Apple, please rate and subscribe. Hopefully you all are already subscribers, but rate, subscribe, and leave a really dope comment. If you're going to rate, do it at 5 stars, please and thank you. But yeah, I just want to be able to put that out there because your positive reviews, even on Spotify and Google or wherever you are listening, helps us continue to grow, continue to develop, and continue to build this thing that I believe is one of the greatest podcasts on Cicely Tice's internet, right? So thank you for all of your support. Now that business is out of the way, I did want to give you some insight into one of my group chats conversations. We were talking about our favorite R&B artists, and both male and female. And, and I had my opinions. All of my friends had their opinions. And, so I took it to the Instagram streets and people started saying some interesting things. Like somebody said, Keith Sweat. I have no idea why that would be an answer, but, I respect your choice. Someone said R. Kelly. And I was just like, no, I wasn't going to post it, but I needed to show the people that somebody still supports this man. And we just have to stop. Okay. I know he put out some bops. I know that you probably got your first streak on to 12 play, but it is not enough for you to keep supporting R. Kelly and all his antics, all right? But there were some other really great responses like Avant and Maxwell and Kiki White. Now, let's pause for the call for Kiki White. Kiki White can sing. She's great. However, outside of her duets with Avant, what has she really done for R&B? Think about it. For real. Okay? Not much. Oh, another interesting one was Kim. Like, really? Like K-E-M, Kim. I just don't know anybody in the world who paused and said, you know what? I want to hear some Kim. No soul ever in America or in this whole earth, I think, has ever said that. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up and to ask a question to you all. Who is your favorite R&B artist, male or female? You can write me by answering that question too. Go to social media and tag me in a post, or email me responding and say, hey, my favorite male artist is this and my favorite female artist is this person, right? So anyway, that's just some insight into what we were talking about, because I thought it was super interesting to hear different people's perspective. And for me, knowing how someone thinks about music kind of gives me insight to who they are, how they think, how they process, and their kind of perspectives on the world and their little bubbles, right? Music to me is really defining. And speaking of music, I hope y'all enjoyed last week's episode about the power of music. Hey, Mr. DJ, shout out to Candy West, who's an amazing guest. That was a really dope episode. Gotten a lot of great feedback on it. And so, yeah, but anyway, without any further ado, let's dive right into today's episode. We got a lot to cover. This is going to be a real good one. We're going to talk about Black health and wellness with one of my good brothers, my friend. But yeah, let's go into the Blessed Report. Let's do it. This week on the Bless Up Report, I want to shout out another coffee business. I think in episodes past, maybe a few weeks ago, we shouted out Portrait Coffee in Atlanta. But this week, because I just came from Memphis, I want to shout out a Memphis local Black-owned shop. It is called Muggin Coffee. It is owned by Ken and Mary Oles, and they founded Muggin Coffee based on the name, kind of like muggin. It's kind of like this Memphis vernacular that speaks to this disposition of being forceful and kind of aggressive and bold, but also pairing it with wordplay about the actual mug. And they're doing some really great things of impacting the community, creating a space where not so much right now that people can hang out, but also creating an alternative space, hopefully in the future, where people can hang out and enjoy and have a safe place of community and enjoy some good coffee, some good frozen drinks. I saw that they had like frozen lemonade and fruit smoothies and things like that. And they also have some pastries and scones that they sell as well. So if you're in the Memphis area, particularly travel to Whitehaven. It's the area I grew up in. Shout out to Hillcrest High School, class 2007. I ain't, you know what I'm saying? But no, if you're in the Memphis area, particularly in Whitehaven, or travel on down to Whitehaven and go to Mug and Coffee House and get some of their products. It seems like it's really great. I forgot to actually make that one of my stops while I was there. So I have tasked my father to go and get me a bag of their coffee beans, and I'm going to brew it and drink it here because I really want to invest my dollars into Black communities. And for me, it's doubly important to support a Black community from my hometown, from the actual neighborhood and the community that I grew up in. I grew up in the Whitehaven area. So shout out to y'all. You can go check them out on mugandcoffeehouse.com, and you can purchase coffee for yourself there, and you can buy the merch that they have as well. So shout out to y'all. Bless up. Let's go into the billboard. What is happening in the world today? Meg the Stallion. We talked about it last week, and as of last week, the story was not as clear, but it's getting more clear now. It's getting clearer. Tory Lanez did actually shoot her. We do not know all of the ins and outs of this story yet. Meg has not given a robust statement about what has happened. There hasn't been much police reporting outside of what was initially reported concerning Tory Lanez. The best friend Kelsey has not said much, but allegedly they were hopping from house to house, going to pool parties or something like that. There was an altercation, and I think Meg was trying to leave the car, and in response, Tory shot her. And police were called, and that's when Tory ended up being in police custody. Meg ended up getting out of the car. They asked her to walk. She was seemingly limp because she was hurt, things like that. I do know Meg has been the butt of a few jokes, and she kind of took that out on Drea. Drea kind of said something real stupid, talking about, I want somebody who loved me so much that they would shoot me. Like, girl, that's stupid. Anyway, I do think this is a classic example. We've been seeing the hashtag, if we got to protect our Black women. And I think that should be more than a hashtag and more of a, like, just reality. There's no reason, brothers, that you should be so angry with any woman at any point or any person that just because you have a disagreement or they're doing something that you don't want them to do, that you result in shooting them, specifically in a relationship. Now, I don't know that Meg and Tory were, if they were dating or messing around, any of that, but really because, shout out to Tabitha Brown, because that ain't my business. But if they were, nothing that she could have done or said warranted her getting shot for it, right? And this is just classic to me, like this whole Napoleon syndrome. You know, Tory is a little bitty fella, a few inches over 5 foot. And I don't know if he was trying to exert his dominance because Meg is such a force. I don't want to say a force, but like she's a tall woman and she's a very present woman, right? She's not a little girl or anything like that. And I don't know if because of the height difference and the size difference, he was like, this is the way that I can show that I'm the man. But that is foolish. That is dumb. That is stupid. Their size differences has nothing to do with how you responded or the way you should have responded to her as a human being, but also as a woman, as a Black woman. So I really pray that this gets resolved. I pray that Meg is okay and that she's recovering well, and that this situation is something that should not happen. It should be an example, brothers. Like, come on. This is not the way that we handle and we treat our women. If we are angry with them, if we are upset with them, if we don't like a response, we communicate. We can be angry, but it does not cause us to put our hands on them, to disrespect them in any way, or definitely not to shoot them. All right. So let's just hope things get resolved. And, bruh, it's not okay. It's not okay, Tory. All right. So end of that. Nicki Minaj is pregnant. She is pregnant by her husband, Mr. Petty. I forget his first name, and I don't really want to remember because he's not that much of a anything noteworthy for me to talk for me to talk about. But yeah, he got her pregnant. They are pregnant. They are expecting a child. She posted the photos on Instagram, and she seems to be very, very, very happy and super excited about motherhood. So overall, feel what you want to feel about Nikki. She is bringing life into the world, so we're excited about that, and just praying for her for a healthy pregnancy and that she has a healthy baby and that she does well as a mother. One thing that I'm hoping is that we see the motherhood that will be a result of this child will also result in her focusing on the music and less on the people, right? She ain't got to clap back. She ain't got to do all this other kind of stuff. I hope that we just get more of the artistry of Nicki Minaj and not the antics, if that makes sense. All right. So, staying on music for a while, DMX and Snoop Dogg actually had a versus battle tonight. If you're listening to the podcast, it would have been last night. And I tuned in for a little bit of it. I appreciate DMX and Snoop Dogg's music, right? But I can't tell you that I'm just like a super fan of either one of them. I do think that it was an interesting versus. I kind of know why they did it because of the whole dog concept. Snoop Dogg and DMX goes around here barking like he is a dog. But kind of in terms and regarding of their music, it's two different styles. And Snoop got hits, and DMX got hits, but I think Snoop has some classics. Like one of the parts that I came in on was Snoop playing the Gangsta Party with Tupac, and them going back and forth on verses is just a classic exchange of bars. And then DMX came in with this song. Now maybe I just didn't know the song. Maybe true DMX fans and New York rap fans knew the song, but I didn't know what the song was. But whatever it was not like it didn't hold a candle to what Snoop Dogg had just done. So, and I do know in more recent years, some of Snoop Dogg's hits have been, or some of his songs have been at best. But if you go in that past and you go down that catalog, he got some stuff. And I didn't watch it all, but I would assume that Snoop Dogg came out as the winner. One thing I do appreciate about this battle is that, shout out to Swiss Beats and Timberland, though, because they just got picked up by Apple. So you could have watched it and streamed it on Apple Music as well. So that was super dope. And I think one thing about that is that the quality of the verses has definitely increased as time has went on. And the other thing, my initial point of my appreciation about it was that these two gentlemen were, again, authentically appreciating each other's music. They were both head nodding and dancing and all that different kind of stuff. So I love the fact that they were able to respect each other. And that's something that's sometimes not always on display, specifically in hip hop, specifically among other men in those type of settings. When we think about sometimes outside of the homies in hip hop, it's always like a beef or a battle. I don't really mess with him. I'm the greatest rapper alive. And all that stuff is cool, I guess. But it's also dope to see brothers supporting each other and genuinely vibing and excited about each other's music. So that was dope, if nothing else. All right. So, sick and shut in list, the prayer list. I think we put Terry Crews on it. I'm officially adding Kanye West. Now, Terry Crews is on the sick and shut in list because he's just full of stupidity. And we're just praying that God slaps him with an intelligence and wisdom stick to get him from talking the type of ignorance that, speaking the type of ignorance that he speaks. That's a whole nother thing. I'm not getting back into Terry Crews. He's not getting that much energy from me. But Kanye West, if you've been paying attention at all to him, he's had a manic episode. And it is true that every time he gets ready to release an album, at least for the last maybe 2 or 3 albums, he has chosen to go through this litany of tweets and responses and just, ridiculous stuff that he would say, random thoughts that really don't make sense and they're just all over the place. And he's doing that again. So on one hand, I know that some people are rolling their eyes at Kanye because it is another antic. It's something that he's known to do. It is something that, we kind of expect. But on the other side of it, this coupled with his alleged presidential run, the campaign rally that he hosted where he said that Harriet Tubman never actually freed slaves, which is a total, just completely erroneous. On top of him talking about his daughter and the possible abortion of said daughter and just calling out Kim and Chris. And we also know that Kanye West, and you probably can hear my tone changing, right? We also know Kanye West deals with bipolar disorder. So, and I don't want to trivialize his mental health or his mental illness. But and I don't want to know that I don't want to say that I'm an expert in, bipolar disorder either. What I will say is that this consistent back and forth, this kind of inconsistency in what he's saying, like he called out like Lil Baby about not wanting to work with him. And Lil Baby tweeted back was like, he didn't even know Kanye wanted to do an album with him. So, part of me definitely believes that he is just having a manic episode and it is just an attempt to get us to talk and to, be looking forward to the album because I think he put out a track list and something like that too. But at the same time, I also think that this is a cry for help. It is really sad to see such a musical genius, like to be honest. And I know that he's been in the sunken place for a while, especially when he said the whole slavery thing was a choice. And, it probably didn't make it any better that he married a Kardashian. Like, I know that we give Kim a lot of flack, but at the same time, some of the stuff that he's doing is not on her. But I do believe that it does not help that he married her because I don't think, and I don't know. Let me just say this caveat. But based on what we know of the Kardashians and who they are, what they represent, I don't think that their relationship was one that has been helpful to his mental health. I will say it like that. All right. So I said all that to say, as much as I wanted to drag Kanye, and as much as I am disappointed, especially in his political endeavors, now I still stand by everything that I said last week and you not needing to vote for him in ABC and 1, 2, 3. But more than that, and I also believe that part of this is an antic, right? But beyond all of that, I do believe Kanye needs serious help, serious help. And I am sincerely praying for him. I think that's all that I can do. I'm not going to host any forums. I'm not about to have any panel discussions around it. Anything. I'm not participating in any. So if anybody's listening to this and want me on their panel to talk about that, I'm already declining your offer. The only thing that I want to do and can do is to pray and to really hope for the best because I'm not in a position to do anything for Kanye. But what I can do is lean on what I know and to hope and pray that he gets the help that he needs. And then one day, maybe he will be in a place. We may never agree with him on some things politically, socially, culturally, but maybe one day we can get to a place where we can just appreciate him for his artistry again. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have for that. And on another kind of somber note, but also a celebration, we want to honor the lives of Congressman John Lewis and Reverend C.T. Vivian. We lost both of these giants this past Friday on the 17th of July. Both of them were recipients of the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Obama, our forever president. And they were just great staples in Black social justice and in the civil rights movement, particularly John Lewis in the voting rights movement. And we lost both of them in the same day. And it is super unfortunate to have that void here in the earth. They are now among the ancestors, and we thank them for all of their work, all of their sacrifices, and everything that they did to help push our communities to be better and to push them further. What makes this a little more interesting is that this now opens up Congressman Lewis's congressional seat. And I think the Democratic Party here of Georgia has already selected a candidate. I forget her name, but she was a state senator here and an alleged protege of Congressman Lewis. So we hope that she's able to, I know it's a huge shoes to fill, but we hope that she's able to continue the fight of justice. And we are definitely praying for the families of Congressman Lewis and Reverend Vivian for, how they have to navigate this through, again, a pandemic. And in some ways, in regards, they're not able to honor those men in the way that I believe that they deserve. They're probably going to have really great and grand funerals. But, it's going to be limited on what they can do, how they can celebrate because of everything that's going on. So thank you great men, for all of your sacrifices and all of your contributions. And we are definitely praying for you, your families. We're praying for the families of Congressman Lewis and Reverend Vivian. Um, Lives very well lived. Well done, brothers. Well done. All right. So we're about to get into the meat of our episode. So grab your snack, grab your favorite drink, and let's head to the living room and let's have this conversation. It's about the love change. Do it with some soul in a little love. What's good, y'all, and welcome to another segment of the living room. Today, I have a special guest. He is a medical savant. I'm gonna say it that way. My Morehouse brother, but I'm allowing him to introduce yourself, man. Introduce yourself to the people, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. My name is Devon Cross. I am a registered nurse at the time, currently in school, studying a dual MPH, MSN with Emory to become a global health nurse practitioner.
That's what's up, man. So let's dive right into the conversation. I think you're absolutely perfect for what we're talking about today. But let's just get some basic information now. What made you jump into the medical field specifically?
So honestly, it started at Johns Hopkins in the summer of 2016. I was conducting research under the Bloomberg School of Public Health and type 2 diabetes. And I was in the East Baltimore community is where I was assigned to do a pilot study by my PI at the time. And we finished the summer pretty good. I developed a great relationship with the individuals in the community, which were Black folks. And one of the final questions that I had for them was, what do you know about your disease? Mm-hmm. And, what do you know about your medication regimen, your food regimen, what have you? And they had no idea what to ask, which, I suppose is common for a vast majority of individuals when it comes to healthcare, just not knowing what questions to ask regarding your health. However, when I asked them, have you ever addressed any potential concerns with the PI? They said they had never seen them. Now, mind you, the study had been going on for 2 years, and the PI was only a mile down the street, but he had never thought to come and meet with the individuals that he was collecting all this data on. So for me, I felt convicted because I didn't have the clinical expertise at the time to address those clinical concerns head on. So for me, I took a break from public health and decided to do a pivot step into nursing so that I can get the clinical background needed to go back into public health and better tend to the needs of the individuals that I have the privilege to do research on, do research with, and to be able to address those clinical needs head on as their needs see fit.
That's what's up, man. So would you say that this is more of just a vocation, or would you consider this a calling for you?
I would probably say it's a calling, primarily because I've been doing what people would deem to be nursing for quite some time. My mom, she was diagnosed with MS and fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis and fibromyalgia back in 2000. And I was, I think, 6 at the time. And from then on, I had always been her primary caretaker with the assistance of my grandparents and family as needed. But up to now, it just always came as second nature to me. And, when I thought about nursing, I was like, well, how hard could it be? And it was hard. I won't lie. But at the same time, it comes so natural to me, even on the floor that I work on, which is a neurological unit. Everything just is second nature.
That's what's up, man. So let me ask you this. Let's first let's pause for the cause and let's just say how you aged me by saying you were 6 in the year 2000. I was like a full middle schooler, at the time. But I'm not even going to do that. I'm not going to go through my crisis on the podcast. So like, why go the route of the RN rather than the MD?
For me, I never really had a passion to become a physician. Like my passion was always in public health. So for me, nursing was a quick pivot as opposed to having to do 4 years and then probably another 4 years of residency just to get back into public health to do eventually what it is I want to do. That was a long route that I didn't want to do. My PI at the time at Hopkins, he told me, he said, I'm going to make you choose medicine by the end of my internship. And I was like, you can try it. But, obviously it never happened. But I think there's a special place for those who choose to do medicine. It just wasn't my path. And nursing satisfies my ability to be with the patients in a more intimate way. than I would be afforded to do with medicine.
So you talked a little bit about the experience you had with the Black community and the
Mhm.
diabetes study, if I'm correct, and
Yes.
then becoming an early on kind of caretaker with your family. What have you done specifically with your like personal expertise and your education to kind of push the health agenda of the Black community?
So for me, it starts with, so separately, I'm a barber.
Okay,
And one of the creative ways
come on,
that
trades.
one of the creative ways that I knew to integrate the conversation of health and healthcare into the Black community was through barbering. Now, a lot of people, as of late, are doing a whole bunch of research into it or whatnot, how to get into the Black community. But it's different with a Black person who actually understands those benefits, doing it straightforward. So
Mhm.
for me, one way to do it is just to have barbershop talk and to casually say, like, have you been to the physician lately? Have you been to the doctor, the nurse practitioner, the physician's assistant, whatever the case may be? Have you gone lately to prioritize your health? Have you prioritized your health in the last, we'll say 3 months? And if there's a negative feedback, then you just have a conversation and explore without conviction, explore those barriers that may exist. What's holding people back from learning about their health? Because ultimately, I mean, it's your lifestyle, it's your belief systems, all these other things that come together, and your health is a manifestation of all of that. And to be able to address all of those needs across the board, I think that allows a more intimate relationship to develop, and that has helped me as a healthcare provider to be able to infiltrate those barriers and to really see the person for who they are and to meet them where they are, without judging them, without any of those things that they feel is usually present when they have to engage the healthcare environment.
It's interesting you said that you approached it from a barber's perspective, because we all know the kind of conversation that goes on in the barbershop. We talk about a little bit of everything.
Some good, some bad.
Yeah, yeah, a lot more bad sometimes than good, depending on the shop. But I guess like there's a stigma among
Mhm.
Black men and going to the doctor. We don't like to go. We like to pass it off as I'm just tired. I'm just this.
Mhm.
How have you used that platform, as a barber and as a health professional to kind of infiltrate or push beyond the additional barriers that Black
Mhm.
men face in health?
So typically, it's funny. My mom always told me that I'd be able to use this one day, but my own health experiences.
Hmm.
I currently have a tumor on my brain. I had a random tumor in my back. It's since been removed. Um, broke my back, had all kind of surgeries, health issues, what have you, long list. And being able to say, well, I feel what you're saying, but this is my experience and these are the things that I'm currently going through. And to be able to put myself in healthcare, and I mean, honestly, in a healthcare system that I don't usually trust all that much,
Yeah.
but to do that and to challenge my own beliefs and my own ideas and customs that I was accustomed to, to do that and say, you know what, I represent healthcare. I'm the image of healthcare that you should be able to trust. And if you can't trust me, let's explore why you don't, and let's work, with the partnership. I want you to understand that I'm an advocate for you, but you also have to be an advocate for you.
Hmm.
And typically, for a lot of Black men, you, it's kind of bad, but if you bring up their loved ones or their children or their mothers or their wives, girlfriends, what have you, then the whole conversation starts to change. And sometimes if you even have those individuals in the room, it's a completely different patient that you're dealing with. And just being able to explore their why, that's really all it comes down to. What is your why? What is it that drives you to do everything that you do on a daily basis? And can you use that same rationale for exploring your health? And if so, then we can work with something. But I think most of it has to do with healthcare professionals have to get to a place where we really ensure that the patient is understanding that they are in a partnership with us.
Hmm.
There's no hierarchy there. It shouldn't be a hierarchy there. I'm just there to help you side by side, and I need you to help yourself so that I can help you.
So what are some of the most common fears that you've heard, like that they've explained? This is why I don't
A
go.
lot, honestly, for a lot of Black people, the common fear is racism.
Yeah.
They just, that historical factor comes into play with all these studies that we know off the back of our hands. those rationales, even if we didn't live them ourselves, just that idea is still kind of embedded in a lot of us. So, a lot of times it's race. How can you get past that? How can you know, also educate people? I think a lot of it is education as well. How can you get to a place where you educate people in the language that they can understand? Because once you go into a hospital or a patient's room and you say, you know what, you have neuromyelitis optica or something like that, their
Say that
brains
again. No,
exactly. So if you say that you have, like neuromyelitis optica or something, like something strange off the bat,
right.
you lost them at the very first words.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that you say after that is like, man, I'm not really trying to hear this. I'm not trying to listen to any of this stuff. But if you go a separate route and you say, you know what, this is what you have. It's called XYZ, but in its essence, it is an inflammatory disease. These are some things that we want to do. These are the medications we're going to put you on. But the medications, we also have to get to a place where we explain why we're putting people on medications, why we running certain tests. My grandma, she has type 2 diabetes. And I was just having a random conversation with her one day. And I said, Grandma, you know what your A1C is? She said, I don't even know what is that? Because my doctor's been testing me that for like 5 years, but I don't know what they're testing. And then I had to let her know, like, your A1C, they test that every 3 months because that's generally the lifespan of your red blood cells. And your red blood cells is what they test to see, how much sugar you have in your blood. We'll say it that way.
Right.
And she said, oh my God, that's the reason why they test that? And I was like, yeah, and your A1C levels typically let people know whether or not you're, a new term, I guess, is pre-diabetic, but whether you're not diabetic at all, pre-diabetic or diabetic. And all those levels give you that understanding. It changed her perspective. And she had a greater appreciation for actually getting the test done as opposed to just being left in the shadows and scared to ask a question.
And see, that's so real. And it hits home because my grandmother had been going to this I won't say random, the same old white doctor for years.
Mm-hmm.
I think my grandmother just turned 94. So he has to be like,
ooh, that's beautiful.
87. He's up there. He's been practicing a long, long, long time. And he had just started. She's had heart issues. Mm-hmm. He was just prescribing medicine. And at one point last year, she got really sick. So my dad took her to this second doctor, get a second opinion. And all the medicine that he was giving her, like it was all acting against each other. And it was slowly deteriorating her heart. And that's my doctor. I trust him. I've been going to him for 50 some years. She lives in a small town. Mm-hmm. And, and we like, Grandma, you can't keep going to this guy. And it's interesting that you brought about race because she's also from the school of thought that I don't always trust doctors, but something about maybe this white doctor is a little bit more trustworthy too. Mm-hmm. And she had to be hospitalized for her to be like, you need something else. Mm-hmm. And I think that speaks to the greater point of like, you're giving her this medicine. He clearly didn't know what he was really doing anymore. She had no idea what to ask, was just blindly trusting him. And I know for me specifically, when I looked for a doctor and I found one, the first question he asked me was, well, how did you find me? I said, well, I Googled black doctors in Cobb County. And you had a pretty decent rating. My insurance covered you. I said, because for me, I want to support black businesses and give my black dollar to black people, but I also want someone who understands my body, what I'm going through, and who can really, like, if I say that this is hurting or this is itching or whatever, what I'm saying, it's not just, oh, whatever, I'm saying, like, he could understand more about this. So let's talk through some myths that you probably heard in the black community and black health. And how, like, for example, my grandmother and the white doctor, right? But like, what are some other myths that we can debunk in black health?
Some myths that we can debunk. Well, one, I would say white isn't always right. I think we have to get away from that notion altogether. That school of thought is old, it's played out, and we know better at this point. Another thought is, thinking that you have to be near death to actually be sick. That's not the case either. A lot of diseases manifest themselves in a more silent manner. A lot of diseases, as we're seeing with COVID-19, can show themselves as being asymptomatic. I think it's important. One, you need to know your health. There is beauty in just simply getting your annual physical. Go do that. A lot of people don't want to go to the doctor until something goes wrong. It's not like that. It's the same idea that I have with, black people going to therapy. Your life ain't got to be in flames for you to go seek help. You know, sometimes you need to just find an avenue to express the good things. Like you feel that your body has been perfect the past year or two. Great. Now let's go and validate that sense of perfection. Let's make sure that everything is working properly. So I think we need to, you know, get rid of this myth that you have to be sick to go to the doctor, that you, oftentimes we say that we don't have the resources. Honestly, there are so many different providers, I mean, out there that some people will really work with you. Some people will jump through hoops just to make sure that you're seen. You can go to a clinic. A lot of us, I know a lot of Black people don't generally have the resources. They don't have the means, what have you. But there are a lot of urgent clinics, urgent care clinics popping up everywhere now. I mean, we spend our money on a lot of other things that we really don't need. We can afford to spend $25 to $30 just to go to an urgent care clinic to get some of our needs addressed. They write prescriptions, they do all this stuff just as well. You can get a physical, everything. So I think, you know, we just have to get away from thinking that one, medicine or healthcare is just altogether too expensive, because that's not always the case. You know, you're not going in for brain surgery every time you go to the hospital. Sometimes it's just, you know what, I have this upper respiratory infection. I just need some medication prescribed. I just want to make sure that it's nothing more like COVID or anything else.
Right.
So I think those are a couple things, or a few things rather, that we probably should revamp altogether. You know, I was in the patient's room last week and he looked at me, he was like, "Man, who are you?" And I said, "I'm the nurse taking care of you tonight." And he was like, "Oh, I didn't think we were smart enough to be in healthcare." So imagine my
Okay.
surprise. But
Yeah.
there again is
Yeah.
another myth that Black is somehow correlated to uneducated. And we have to get away from that thought process as well.
And it comes from us sometimes. I
Yes,
think
it
that's the
does. It does. Yeah.
that is the most almost traumatizing thing about it all, is
Oh,
that
yes.
that school of thought comes from our skin folk.
Hmm.
Um but like, speaking of those myths though, like how do you feel, one, how do you feel about home remedies and, you know, oral traditions of care? And then like, how does that sometimes come into play when you're treating someone?
So there are certain medications that counteract herbal remedies and such. You know, like garlic, for example, isn't the best thing to take with blood thinners because they
Mhm.
kind of counteract each other. But my honest perspective is, given that I'm interested in global health, I understand the practices and customs that have helped communities for centuries. And I would never want to take away from that just because I have a westernized perspective of medicine. I
Yeah.
also acknowledge the fact that Western medicine is not always the best. I think that's another myth, speaking of myths, that we need to get away from. Western medicine is not always, you know, the top tier way to go about medicine. Obviously, we have our own flaws.
Mhm.
And I think we need to get to a place where we can address that. There are like certain teas that can really remedy a lot of diseases, a lot of illnesses, what have you, even if it's like the common cold or something like that. I mean, you look at COVID when it first came out, everybody was saying take vitamin C. You know, you can pop that over the counter. You can get that from
Yeah.
the little small Vitapacks at any store or whatever else,
Mhm.
and you can feel great, prime your immune system. So there is beauty and magic, if you will, in herbal remedies, um, that a lot of cultures really just depend on from a holistic health standpoint. Sometimes what those things can't do, maybe medication from a provider may help. But I think, you know, the important thing that I would say is just to always have your provider, or you do it yourself, cross-check the medications with whatever herbal supplements that you also take, because they may not always benefit each other.
Yeah, because you're not getting rid of Black folks ginger ale.
Oh no,
And
but I live by ginger ale.
ginger ale and a nap, you know, like you take you some ginger ale. Like my grandmother was infamous for ginger ale, a Tylenol, and go to sleep. And some way, somehow, as a little 7-year-old, I woke up 100% better.
That's it. That's it.
100% better. And it's also interesting too. Like I don't know if it's the formal name, but in the South, there's like these grass bugs, like chiggers.
Hmm.
And I got them all the time as a child. My wife came to, we were at a wedding in Memphis,
Hmm.
and rehearsal dinner was like outside, and she got them on her foot. and she thought it was a mosquito bite, and she kept, and I was just like, girl, if you don't get you some calamine lotion and dip your foot in some oatmeal or something, you're gonna be fine. So she went to the doctor and got all these, and it worked. The creams worked. So
Mm-hmm.
again, not debunking or going against medicine, but it's just so interesting how like our perspective for treating it and how it worked with me in one season decades ago, and for her, it seemingly didn't do anything. Like she needed the actual prescription based ointment. So like
Mm-hmm.
even in that, like have you seen like that difference where somebody is like adamant about what they want to use as far as herbal treatments or home remedies or just some over-the-counter concoctions, and the other
Yeah.
person's like, I need this prescription, and one
Oh
works?
yeah.
Like, is it just the body responding differently, or is it that some of the things aren't working the same?
That is a loaded question. So I'll start by saying yes, I've seen both. I would say my role as a healthcare provider and as a healthcare professional is simply saying, okay, let's lay it all on the table. Tell me every single thing that you take. Because honestly, them being that transparent to tell you everything they take anyways is pretty rare. But if they're doing it, we'll say that's the situation and say, okay, we have all this. Well, these are the medications that we recommend you take as well. So let's look at these. Let's make sure that there are no drug to drug or drug to herbal interactions. And let's make sure that we have you set in the spot where we don't compromise your belief systems at all, hopefully, or at the very least, not entirely too much. And let's make sure that we get you in a position to have the most optimal sense of health that you can have given your situation. And if you get that, if you get, the patient to be receptive to that, I think you're in the ballpark to do some amazing things. But you also have some patients who are like, yeah, I need medication. I ain't doing no herbal stuff, no none of that. I just need medication.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's fine too. But, sometimes, for example, for the common cold, you'd be surprised. We're not always going to give you just all of these prescriptions for the common cold.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we may just send you home and say, you know what, just take it easy. If you get a headache, a fever, or something like that, here, take some Tylenol. Aside from that, just rest. Drink plenty of fluids, Gatorade, Pedialyte, water, whatever the case is, and you should get better. If you notice anything get worse, contact us, and then we'll take it from there. We'll do it on a case by case or symptom by symptom basis. So there are so many different ways to split that, but you see a wide range of preferences from the patient populations.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And like you said something earlier about, being asymptomatic and, checking up on your health specifically in relation to COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we do know is that, Big Rona is what I call her, has disproportionately affected Black and brown communities.
Yes.
One of the things that I've discussed with some friends was that, one of the lenses that I've looked at racism at is through the lens of public health. It is a public health issue. You talked about some of the barriers, in brevity, but like, what are some of the real like hurdles for Black folk getting access to real health care?
So a lot of it is one, a lot of Black people just honestly cannot afford healthcare. They don't have enough money to afford insurance, which means anytime that they go seek healthcare, they have to pay out of pocket. And a lot of people, as we saw with COVID, are living month to month, check to check.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of money to allocate towards, some unsuspecting $1,000 bill because they went to the hospital to check something out just to try to prioritize their health. They shouldn't be penalized for that.
$1,200 ain't do nothing.
Exactly. And you shouldn't be penalized for trying to make your health a priority. But typically what happens in the Black and brown communities is that that's exactly what it comes down to. A lot of people try to prioritize their health. They try to do the right thing. And then they get this bill that puts them, in debt up to their knees. And now you have just a whole whirlwind of issues that you're dealing with in addition to your health. So now this, $5,000 bill that I can't afford is now going to, cause me to stress out. And then my health is going to decline even more. And it may lead to some unhealthy habits such as drinking or whatever else. Yeah. And now you just open up the floodgates to that many more things happening. Also, what you have to, realize too, is that a lot of people don't give healthcare a long leash. And what I mean by that is that all it takes is one visit one interaction, one moment. It's kind of like a bad relationship. You know, you already know the relationship there is bad. You go into the conversation, you hear something you don't like, you know what, forget this, I'm done with you. And that's kind of the way that a lot of Black and brown people approach medicine, because there's already this distrust that exists there.
Yeah.
And if you get to a point where your provider is white, you already have some sort of reservations going into the conversation. But then when your provider is trying to write you off as a list of symptoms as opposed to being a whole person, then you just kind of feel belittled at that point. You don't feel safe to, one, talk about your issues, and two, then they give you a whole bunch of medications, a whole bunch of recommendations for a condition that you didn't even give, that you weren't even able to give them the whole picture on. So now that becomes a problem, because it's like, yeah, well, I went there because I was feeling anxious. They gave me all of these anti-anxiety medications, but now I'm in a place where I'm still anxious because they didn't deal with the situation at hand. They didn't help me, you know, talk through this or really allow me to go deeply into what I think it is. They just said, oh, you having a symptom? Great. Here's a medication for that symptom. And now why am I having other symptoms? And now I can't sleep. So how you going to, now you got to give me some medicine to help me sleep. And now that continuum just keeps happening. And once you do that, you put a person in a place where they say, you know what, this is not helping anything. I'm on more medications than I ever want to be on. All the symptoms are still there, and my root problem has never left. How can I trust anybody? Why would I even waste my time trying to trust somebody when they're not going to listen to me for who I am, and they're not going to understand my experience as a Black person, brown person, or what have you?
So specifically staying on that with the Black community, what have been some of the, I guess, most like alarming effects that COVID has had on our community?
I think the alarming effects that COVID has had on the Black community, not being able to afford adequate health insurance, or health insurance at all, puts us in a place where if we have symptoms, we don't really get them checked. If we sneeze a little bit, if we have a little difficulty breathing, we may just write that off as nothing. And by the time it gets to the point where we feel like our life is being threatened by this virus, then we go to the hospital and we're in the worst situation that we want to be in, because now we're in a hospital where, you know, we may be put on a ventilator. We may have to do all these blood tests, all this other stuff. And now I feel like every single moment I'm gasping for air. My body's just riddled with pain. And all I can think about, which I've seen in a lot of my patients, all I can think about now is my hospital bill and how much it's going to be. I just want to get out of here before I collect any more, add any more to that bill.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place to put somebody in, because not only do you not have the means to afford a bill for COVID-19 and all the stuff that they're going to run anyways, assuming that you're symptomatic. If you're asymptomatic, they may just check you. You still get a bill for something and they just send you back home. But I think for the Black community, the hardest thing is just, one, understanding what COVID really means, because we, like I said, we give healthcare a short lease. If y'all don't get it right quick, I ain't got time to hear about this is what's going on. I take it back. No, this is going on. Nah, I take it back. But what I will tell y'all is that all y'all need to stay at home. We don't know what's going on though. We can't tell you why you're staying at home, but just stay at home. After 3 or 4 months, I mean, everybody's going to get to a point where they're just like, you know what? Forget this. I never trusted them in the first place. I should have never trusted them now. And then you put yourself in a bad situation, because the jobs and the economy, you look at all the jobs that people of color work. For example, in Georgia, those were the first jobs that Kemp opened up. He said, you can go to a nail salon, you can go to the theater, you can go to a barbershop.
You can do all that.
And you can do all that. Don't open up Apple. Don't open up all these other places, all these major companies, Fortune 500 companies. Don't open up none of them up. Let's just open up the simple stuff. And it's like, we don't need our nails done. We don't need our haircuts. Like, we want them, but we don't absolutely need them. And the unfortunate part is you have a lot of people of color that are Black people. Let's just say Black people for right now. You have a lot of Black people that are dependent on a check, specifically that unemployment check. Well, what happens is, once you get to a place where the governor says, hey, all these businesses can open, if that is the case, you no longer qualify for unemployment, because the governor has said that you can work.
Right.
So now you're off of that. You have to go into a place where you're putting yourself, one, you probably don't have adequate PPE, because even the healthcare workers don't have it. And you're putting yourself in a place where you're vulnerable. to getting all these infections that have already been plaguing your community, all these viruses that have already been plaguing your community, and now you have a whole pandemic that's going on, and you have no choice but to work because they still asking for rent, they're still asking for all these bills to be paid, but yet you don't have the means. So at what point, as even I think as like a black man and a black woman, especially with kids, you come home and you look at those kids and say, well, I got to provide for my family.
Right.
And now you put them in a position where they have to go to work in the middle of a pandemic without the proper protection, equipment, what have you. And they have no choice. And are they likely to get the virus? Yes, because they're in this hailstorm and they're forced to deal with it because it's, hey, you should have planned better. I mean, that's really what the government really says to us. And that's how they really view a lot of the stuff that's going on with us in our community. We're at fault. You can't talk about what's hurting the Black community regarding the pandemic without looking in depth at the systemic issues that have plagued our community from the jump. Like, you can't talk about, well, COVID-19 is just ravaging the Black and brown community. Yeah, well, why is the healthcare system the way that it is, that we are always the most vulnerable populations there are? Like, just because my skin is Black has no bearings on why this virus, I know my skin Black. Let's just talk about it that way. This virus has no idea. So why is it that we're all more susceptible to catching it? And you have to look at those systematic things that are in place, such as, lack of resources, the bias that exists in healthcare towards Black people. You have to look at all these paradigms and say, hey, we cannot gain their trust, let alone can we reach their community without addressing the stuff that we've inflicted on them before COVID ever happened.
Right. And I think that's the conversation that has been missing among advocates, politicians, and even some of our, non-melanated healthcare professionals, is that not understanding the systemic issues of racism and prejudice and biases that often plague our communities. Even if we look at mortality rates among infants and mothers giving birth, all these type of things. When we cry out, we're often, seen as dramatic and emotional, or we're overreacting. And to your very strong point, not having access to the resource to afford healthcare. Like, I work in affordable housing, and it's so amazing that Georgia Tech did a study that those families who were part of the program that I work with, who were able to get an affordable house, they had higher graduation rates, and they also had lower health issues. And the reason why is because they were not income cost burdened by their housing anymore. So they could allocate some of those financial resources to make sure that their kids had, better education, or after school programs, or ACT, all those different kind of prep testing and stuff like that, that typically you wouldn't be able to do. But on the flip side, to also use those financial resources to pay for maybe that better healthcare plan that their job offered, or even if it wasn't the greatest plan, to be able to just afford the copay, right?
To have something,
right? You know what I'm saying? Because you could have the healthcare, but like, I worked in a job where my copay at urgent care was $60. And for some families, $60 is
a lot.
Is a lot. It's a make or break. It's a meal. It's gas for the next 2 weeks. It could be a plethora of things. So just understanding that when we talk about systematically, we're talking about a myriad of systems. We're not just talking about, the hospital in our neighborhood maybe isn't the best. That could be true, but I still don't want to go there, because regardless of whether it's the best or not, to your point, I don't want the bill. I don't want to come home and have the additional stress of how I'm gonna pay this bill, how I'm gonna do this. Are they gonna come take Big Mama house? Like, all these different types of things. Like, we go down these rabbit holes and these, pigeonholes sometimes, really trying to figure out what is best. And oftentimes our health comes last.
Yes.
We have to do everything else just to survive.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not as apparent that taking care of ourselves is the primary means of survival.
Exactly.
And let me ask you this, like, speaking of survival though, how has your mental being in the, the all of it, surrounded by seeing the cases, seeing what's going on, how has it been for you, just seeing how people are taking precautions or not giving any cares about what's going on?
So it can be frustrating. Especially seeing the massive parties that are thrown in Atlanta every night.
Come on, Compound.
That is crazy. That was absolutely crazy.
Like, Rona juice is what they really
But if I'm being honest, I try to use my global perspective when it comes to these type of issues, even if it relates to the Black community.
Yeah.
Is that I have to first understand the culture. I have to understand the individuals, and I have to understand the cultures within the cultures. So I know, when I say culture of the Black community, Black folks have so many cultures within themselves that, everything is different, and it would take ages, a lifetime, to thoroughly explore every single culture that every single Black person has. I mean, our belief systems are drastically different, but generally when we speak of the Black community, we have these umbrella things that we all just relate to.
Yeah.
So when it comes to exploring people's cultures and perspectives and beliefs and attitudes towards things, I can't fault the people who don't believe that COVID is real, or that we're actually in a pandemic, or who know and just don't care, because that's their belief system. And as a leader in healthcare, I don't ever want to get to a place where I allow my beliefs and my morals to overtake the way that I view other people and how I treat the patients.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to that, I may be frustrated, yes, but I also understand that even while there may be a disconnect, if there's anything that I can work with, my job is to, at the very least, educate the people of, this is what it is, this is what it's not. So how I've been able to take care of my mental health, honestly, and my therapist, he actually recommended this last week during our session. He said, look, man, you always take care of other folks, you start taking care of you. He said, you spend your whole life running, chasing everyone, making sure that the world is taken care of, everybody around you is taken care of, and yet you've left yourself in the past. And I couldn't help but just be like, damn, all right.
Don't they
Okay.
do that to you,
And
man?
he a Morehouse man too, so he ain't holding back nothing. So I was just like, you know what, bro, you may be right. Okay, all right. So now I'm at this place where I really say to myself, you know what, this is their issue. It's not my issue. I can only do what I can with what I have. And my grandma, she told me something some years ago when I was dealing with an episode of depression, because just a lot of stuff was going on. She said, son, any problem that's too big for you is not your problem, it's God's problem, so give it to him. And that's something that's just always stuck with me. So now, even with this pandemic, I look at it and say, you know what? I've done my part. I've educated people when they needed to be educated. If they don't want to listen to it, that's on them. I can't, blow a blood vessel trying to get
Yeah.
folks to understand my perspective, to understand the severity of what's happening. I have to do my part and educate, and whatever they're willing to accept, fine. And if they want to go out, party, and do all kind of stuff, unfortunately, that's on them. The only downside to it is they're likely going around people who actually prioritize their health and could potentially get them sick. And that's where my concern lies more than anything. If I knew that all these people, for example, at compound were going to be around each other 24/7 and that was it, they weren't going to bother anybody else, then I'd be like, you know what, have a great party. I really hope that y'all take a shot for me. That's cool. But because I know that there may be a bit of carelessness there that allows them to neglect the health of those around them, I have an issue with that, because there are a lot of vulnerable people that we may not know their condition, but there are a lot of vulnerable people that we may come in contact with on a day-to-day basis that we could be exposing them to the very thing that could kill them. And to have a total disregard to that is what my problem is. So, while I acknowledge all of that, the ways that I take care of myself are honestly reading, poetry, singing, oftentimes working out, but I haven't did too much working out lately, I'll be honest. And really just talking to my family. FaceTime is a thing now. I never really appreciated it until now. But now, yeah, I'm on FaceTime with my mom like every single day. Just being able to connect, to joke, to laugh all the pain away. That's really the method to my madness. I have some days that are better than others. Some days I get extremely down. I get extremely frustrated, extremely irritated. And I allow myself to feel those emotions. But I also know that I cannot allow myself to dwell in those places.
Yeah.
And to make sure that at some point or another, I acknowledge what I'm going through. I acknowledge the situation. And I tell myself, you're bigger than this. You can handle it. Do this. And if you can't handle it, seek help. And that's it. So I have a lot of resources, a lot of people that I can talk to. I actually have a certified therapist and the whole nine. So I stay afloat that way.
So let me first say that I love to see a brother who is doing the work. Okay, you can tell when somebody has done the work. Listen, I mean, it's a world of a difference in just your perspective and how you sometimes internalize or don't internalize certain
Yeah.
things anymore. And I think specifically with you being kind of in, on the front line and on the
Mhm.
front line, really, it's super important that you're taking care of yourself. We're going to get to some more of that a little bit later, but
Of course.
what would you say? You said education. What are some like tips, even if you got to fuss folk out, that you would tell folk right now who say, I'm just ready to get back to normal, like the
Mhm.
people who went to Compound this past
Right.
weekend?
So I would say get comfortable in understanding that normal is not going to be the same.
Yeah.
No matter how bad we want it to be, it's not going to be the same. And we can't ignore it away. I think that's what a lot of us are actually doing. We're trying to ignore the fact that things are changing drastically. And what it points to, which is quite ironic, is that, for the last year or so, our generation has been very vocal about mental health and how mental health matters, illness, whatever else.
Yeah.
And even,
Yeah.
having a conversation between mental illness and mental health, which are two drastically different things, but oftentimes get coupled together. So, we've gotten to a point now where I would honestly say, it's a tough one, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. It's extremely tough. I would just say prioritize other people.
Yeah.
Even if you don't believe that it's a real thing, just please think of your neighbors, think of the people that you love, both near and far. And people are dying. People are not able to attend funerals. People are not able to visit their loved ones in the hospital for their last days. Um, so many things are happening. Some people are just dropping dead at home, and I can get into why that is later. But there are so many issues going on in the world right now. We need to find a reason and a way to agree on one thing. At the very least, can we just say life matters? Can we say that I want you to live just as much as I want to live? And even if I disregard my own life, my own health, or whatever else to have a little bit of fun, at the very least, I need to be mature enough to acknowledge that, hey, you do value your life. You do value your
Right.
health, and you don't want to put that at risk. And if my presence means that I'm putting your life at risk in any way, just acknowledge that and say, you know what, fine, I'll remove myself. If I'm going to have fun with people, I need to have fun with the people who have the same perspective as me, which means they could care less about getting this virus. They could care less whatever consequences come with that. But at the very least, don't put other people's lives at risk because you have your own bias. That honestly, that's really the biggest thing. Like, if you're going to party, you're going to do it regardless if I say do it or don't. But just be conscious of the consequences that are posed as a result of either your complete disregard or your acknowledgement of this pandemic and of how it's affecting the Black community.
You know what? And that's so important. Like, I mean, and just in layman terms, people, wear your mask,
Of course.
wash your hands. I know you quarantined or in your house, some of y'all are. Take you a shower. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are the basic things
Yeah,
that I think,
daily hygiene. Daily hygiene is something that we should be doing anyways.
anyway, but there's so many people
Um,
who aren't.
exactly. And you know, wash your hands. Don't touch your face if you know your hands are dirty. When you go out in public, at the very least, just wear your mask. Just wear your mask. 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes ain't going to hurt you. I wear mine for 12 hours straight. Wear your mask. You can do it. I promise you. If you feel like your ears hurt, tie it around your hair. If you feel like whatever your excuse is to not protect yourself, find a reason to invalidate that excuse. I beg
Yeah.
of you to do that. A mask is a simple thing that you can do. I mean, it's between a mask or 5,000, 6,000, and some people even got $1 million, which is crazy to me. Hospital bill. I mean, do you want to be on a ventilator because you chose not to wash your hands and wear a mask? I mean, to me, that's absolutely bizarre. I can't even rationalize such a thought. But prioritize yourself. Prioritize other people. Care
Yeah.
enough about yourself to prioritize your health. Um, I see so many people now. I mean, you go to a store and you see all these people, and it's like, part of me wonders, like, do they think that by not wearing a mask that somehow you get some acquired immunity from people, from being around people who are sick or something? People need
Yeah.
to understand COVID-19 ain't working that way. That's not it. COVID-19, the actual virus itself that is floating around, is not a vaccine. It doesn't work that way. If you get it, you got it. And how your body responds to it, or how it responds to your body rather, is not up to you at all. You can either be asymptomatic or you can be near death. Because you don't have control of that, it would make sense to just avoid all of that together and social distance, stay inside whenever you can, be smart about who you go around, why you're going around people, where you go, the whole nine.
Yeah.
Just be diligent and prioritizing yourself and others.
That's so important, man. So, like, as we wrap up, what are some, beyond Big Rona, what are just some practical ways, everyday type things that people could do to ensure that they're living their best life and maximizing their health?
Do things that you love to do, um, within the guidelines. Do things. If you like to meditate, do that. Find ways to be creative. If you want to do art, do that. Find ways to be innovative with whatever it is. Learn a new hobby, learn a new trade. Um, Zoom is booming now. Find reasons to just jump on Zoom and do whatever fun activities you can with other folks. You can do arts and crafts activities online. You can have rap ciphers online, whatever it is that floats your boat. Do these things that really bring you peace of mind and joy. Stay off of social media as much as you can. If you don't have to be on social media, or if what you're doing, and let me clarify, social media is a great place to be at under the right context. If you can get to a place where if you get to a place where you're on social media 24/7 and all you see is Black bodies being killed and you see a lot of arguing between individuals, whatever else, that's a toxic place. It's a toxic environment. Log off, decompress, go to Netflix, watch your favorite show, go to Hulu, whatever the case is, watch your favorite show, series, movie, what have you, but do the things that bring you peace and joy. Don't go searching for trouble. If there's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, or if there's someone that makes you feel uncomfortable, prioritize yourself and say, you know what, I have to say no. I can't deal with you today. Mom, I'm sorry. I understand there's a lot going on at home. I cannot have this conversation right now because my mental health will not allow me to put any more emotional coins into this slot. I need you to understand that, to respect that. Surround yourself by people who appreciate you, who respect you, who love you, and give yourself positive affirmations every single day. Ain't nothing wrong with bragging on yourself. Do that. Do whatever you need to do to fulfill not just your own wants and desires, but your spiritual needs, your emotional needs. Whatever you have to do to decompress and to refill, do that.
That's what's up, man. So I really want to appreciate you, number one, for being on the podcast, for joining me in the virtual living room and having this really important, informative conversation. I think a lot of us are miseducated, not educated, a whole bunch of things around just health in general. So thank you for that. But could you tell the people how they can follow you on socials when you're on there? Anything you got going on? How can they reach out to you?
Honestly, I'm on there quite often nowadays because I ain't got nothing to do if I ain't in the hospital. But my IG is _cross, CROSS_D. You can find me there. I've never made a Facebook, so I ain't got that. You can't follow me there. LinkedIn, just search Devon Cross if you want to connect on a professional basis. It's pretty much all I have on that. I do want to say one last thing though, regarding COVID-19 specifically, is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I've done ample amounts of research on my patients and their cases. I know early on the idea was that, people were saying that COVID-19 is nothing worse than the flu or the common cold. That was a myth. I think a lot of that was just healthcare bias and trying to push the flu vaccine, which they've been trying to push on folks for the past 10 years since the swine flu came out. I think we have to get to a place where we really are transparent as healthcare leaders with the community and acknowledge what we either don't know. It's fine to say you don't know, or to at the very least be 100% transparent and say, you know what, this is what we're dealing with. And one way that I've been able to keep not just myself safe, but also my family safe, especially my grandparents from going to church gatherings because they love it, is to simply say, one, COVID-19 is much less a respiratory virus, and it's really what medicine may call a coagulopathy disorder. So it causes blood clots, and it does so by, the ACE2 receptors that it's highly specific to, which is how COVID-19 infects your body and enters your cells. Well, these same receptors are found on endothelial tissue. Endothelial tissue lines your blood vessels, it lines multiple organs throughout your body, the whole nine. So when you see people or hear stories of people going, to the hospital and for whatever reason have a clean bill of health, but all of a sudden have to go on dialysis. Well, that's why, because ACE2 receptors are in the kidneys, they're in the lungs, the liver, the brain, heart. So some people have these sudden strokes. That's why. Some people have these random heart attacks and just die. That's why. The lungs are highly vascular, which means it's full of endothelial tissues, which makes it easy for the lungs to be so susceptible to the virus and have all the respiratory complications that we see. Yes, but COVID-19 is an inflammatory disease. It does all kind of damage to the endothelial tissue itself. The endothelial tissue controls inflammation, controls the prevention of blood clots. So it regulates your blood. It does so many different things. When COVID-19 enters the body, apparently it is causing all this dysfunction, which means that you have uncontrolled regulation of inflammation and your blood. And you also sustain so much endothelial damage that a lot of people are not really dying of respiratory compromise. They're dying from these blood clots and these blood vessel issues that lead to multiple organ failure, including, but not limited to, respiratory compromise, cardiac arrest, stroke, kidney failure, the whole nine. So when people think of COVID-19, I want you to understand this disease hits your entire body and it manifests itself in different ways on every single person. So while your neighbor may be asymptomatic or somebody else may just have a bad headache, there's somebody else who is dying because their kidneys are failing. They have blood clots that they're throwing all around. They're having strokes at 30, at 20 years old. They're having long-term and short-term memory loss now. They have this weird brain fog. All of these things, because COVID-19 infects so many body systems, we're getting to a point where we're seeing the true manifestations of this virus if you contract it. And the lungs are just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah. So I think one thing that we have to understand is the severity of it. And because it shows itself in so many different ways, it's extremely scary. Like, some people are waiting for a vaccine. Well, be safe while you wait, because that may not come out no time soon. Some people just completely disregard it. Just know what you're dealing with. If you're disregarding the recommendations of just isolating yourself, staying away from people, wearing a mask, not washing your hands, understand what you're potentially up against. It wasn't until last week that I found out my cousin had it. She was the first person in my family I found out had it.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of Black folks are like, I ain't seen nobody really have this virus that they're talking about. I don't think it's real. Yeah, well, we can't say that. We have to be mindful of, even though we don't know anybody personally, I can guarantee you, if you ask around 2 or 3 people, somebody's going to give you an answer as to who got it.
I know 5.
Exactly.
Who've had it personally. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's a real thing. And I just want us as Black people to really prioritize our health, prioritize the people around us, our loved ones, whatever the case may be. And if we don't understand the severity of something, simply ask. Don't be afraid to ask the questions needed for you to be informed, for you to be included in the conversation so that you can have an idea of what you're really dealing with. Don't be afraid to have those conversations.
That's what's, and while we're extending the conversation, let's just like, would you recommend people just go get tested? I mean, a lot of tests are free. Mm-hmm. So is that something that you would recommend people just to go do, just out of kind of like preventative maintenance?
Honestly, if you have the resources to do it, and it's free, if you feel that you're sick or you feel that you've been exposed, by all means, go do it. I mean, I get it. A lot of people have so much anxiety, just wondering like, oh, I woke up, my throat was sore. Maybe I got COVID. Should I go get checked? I had a friend that texted me that this morning. It was like, yo, I'm feeling kind of sick. I don't know what's going on. I felt better after I got up, but do you think I should go get tested? And I let her know, like, yeah, it may not be anything, but at the same time, if you have the resources to go do it, meaning if you have the money just to get in the car, or if you have a car to drive up to a free testing site, if you want to do it, by all means, I would advocate doing it. At the very least, you know your status. And I want to also say, to that last point, don't just prioritize COVID. Prioritize your health in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Get tested for your STDs, STIs, everything else. Like, continue to get tested, continue to get your physical, know your status, not just with COVID-19, but with everything. Make sure that you prioritize that. I know a lot of healthcare professionals and hospitals and agencies are neglecting every single thing right now because of COVID-19. But trust me, if you want to get a full look, I just got a full physical done last week by my primary care provider. You know, you got to jump through
Mhm.
hoops just to go into the office. But when you finally get in, I got my full panel. I got a complete metabolic panel. I got all of my blood information. I got my STI, STD results. We're all clear. You know, we're able to prioritize all
Yeah.
these still in the midst of COVID. So don't get so blinded by COVID-19 that we neglect other aspects of our health, including our mental health.
Absolutely. Man, again, thank you. We're going to wrap up this conversation. And
Mhm.
he told you how to follow him, how to get in contact. If you have any questions, I'm sure he'll be willing and open to answer them.
Of
Just hit him
course.
up. So we're going to go into our next segment of the show. We talk about some Black man self-care. We talked about it a little bit here. We're going to do it officially in a moment with I Am My Brother's Keeper. All right. So thank you again, brother, for joining us. And we're going to talk about some Black man self-care on this segment we like to call I Am My Brother's Keeper. And I got a brother here. I think I've been having a lot of our Black women on, which is great.
We
But
love them.
I've been having to readjust the title of the segment a little bit to make it gender equitable. Let me say it that way.
We'll take it.
But this week I got a brother in the living room. We're going to talk about some Black man self-care. So, man, tell us, what are you doing this weekend for self-care?
All right, so Devon Cross here. What I'm doing for self-care is honestly a lot of stuff. It varies from day to day. Sometimes I eat ice cream. Sometimes I just have a sweet tooth and that's it. Other times I'll write poetry, I'll sing, do some random dance, be real goofy or whatever else. You know, stuff that I can't do around other folks because I'm too worried about it. Watch my favorite movie. I done probably watched Pursuit of Happiness a billion times, and now I'm watching Hitch. It could just be I love Will Smith. I don't know. But also, I am now in therapy. I realized the need to address a lot of stuff, not just during this pandemic, but
Yeah.
address things that maybe I haven't dealt with since childhood or whatever else. Like, one, nobody likes trauma. I mean, well, some people like trauma. Let me correct that. Nobody likes to deal with folks that like trauma, and I think something that we really have to, prioritize is our mental health and our mental well-being. And sometimes that means being open and transparent and candid and saying, you know what, I'm struggling. I'm not okay. I have this going on, that going on, what have you. And I really want to talk through it. And there's beauty in also saying, you know what, I had a great day and I want to tell you how great my day was. Therapy is not just for problems and chaos.
Yeah.
Therapy is also to celebrate your victories and your small wins. And for me, I went to therapy. I used to go to therapy at Morehouse, and it was a Black woman. She I don't want to say she was a Spelmanite or Spelman woman, because they'll come for me if
Listen,
I don't
they
get it
will
right.
come at you hard for that one.
So she was a Spelman woman, and she told me a lot of good stuff, a lot of good advice. But at the end of the day, that connection just wasn't there. And when I went to Emory, I saw the therapist, and she was a white woman, and the connection, I mean, was still not there. And yeah.
I wish I could have saw my face when he said he went to a white woman. But
I mean, that's all they had at Emory at the time, Student
You were
health.
at Emory. Yeah.
That's it. The student insurance only affords you certain privileges, I guess. But then, I had a real heart-to-heart conversation with myself, and I said, you know what? I don't know what it is that's missing. And the more I've reflected on it, the more I realized what it really was. I needed a Black man, somebody that could see me for who I am, that understood my course through life, outside of a clinical setting, someone who genuinely understood what things could have transpired for me to be there in the first place.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, therapists, they look at you and they see what is in front of them, the symptoms, the issues or whatever, after you finally hit the door. Whereas I needed somebody who understood what I was going through out in the world first, and what things could possibly impact me in a way that would be detrimental enough for me, a Black man, to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I need help. I can't do this anymore. This is what I want. Or to say, hey, I had the best experience ever. I can't wait to tell you about this. And, ironically enough, I found a Morehouse man. His name is John Diggs. He's in Decatur. Look him up. he might be booked now, but but the brother is amazing at what he does. Very welcoming environment. I actually feel seen, heard, felt, all that, and that has paid dividends for me during this time.
So amazing. And it's so interesting. I'm going to talk about what I'm doing for self-care.
Go ahead.
But when I was on my journey to find a therapist, I specifically wanted a Black woman. And for me, it's just because I just think Black women are the original superheroes.
Oh yeah.
And I needed to be cultivated and affirmed in that way. And part of the reason is growing up, my best friend was a woman, and me and my mom have this beyond because I am a mama's boy. I'm not gonna even hold you and try to act like I'm not. But we also have this relationship that has shifted in adulthood. That's become like this respect factor, and she's able to, I don't want to say parent me, but almost mentor me in a way that's different. She steps out of motherhood in moments and becomes the counselor, this person of almost divinity for me that I'm able to look to, and not trying to replace that, but having that representation in my life was really important when I was seeking out a therapist. So to that point, and to Devon's point, like, find somebody who meets you, who can meet you where you are, can understand how you're traversing through life. And sometimes that means that we have to get our skin folk, like for real.
That's
because I've heard horror stories about people who tried to talk about what's going on in the global pandemic of racism. And, their therapists have kind of played it to the side and was like, I don't think that that's what it is. First of all, you're wrong for for that vantage point at all. Don't tell me what my experience is. But at the same time, for somebody who can really understand what you're going through to help you process it as well. So that was a pause for the cause, because I am a huge advocate for everybody going to therapy, because one of the reasons I'm in therapy too is to deal with Negroes who don't go to therapy. Like, that's a reason within itself.
Look, the irony.
Listen, so if everybody go, we all be okay. No, that's not true. But still, go get you some help.
I want to interject one time. So one thing that I did want to point to, a lot of Black folks don't go to therapy because they ain't trying to be prescribed medication. Go to a behavioral therapist, not a clinical therapist, because those are drastically different. Behavioral is they're gonna talk to the person. Clinical, they're gonna talk to the symptoms. All right, back to you, bro.
Yeah. Now, if you need that medication, don't be afraid of it too.
That's it.
But this weekend, man, I'm probably gonna wrap myself in some movies, and just some chill time. One of the ones that I get lost in is Dreamgirls. When it first came out, I saw it like 3 times. I know every song. I know every line.
I need to hit a note. I need to hear a note. Where we at?
No. So no. But just know that I will be at the top of my lungs in this house and probably try to find The Color Purple. That is my all-time favorite film.
I actually saw that on Hulu today. I didn't watch it, but I saw it.
I can watch The Color Purple every day, all day. It is just a story of redemption that just brings me such great joy. And I've read the book like 3 or 4 times. I've seen the Broadway play.
Oh, you're invested.
Oh, I am invested.
Okay, we'll take that.
Color Purple stand. But no, this weekend I'm just going to get wrapped up in that and just find joy in the simplicity of just watching television and enjoying myself. Because even in quarantine, I find myself being hyper productive. Producing the podcast, working out. We got to get you back in the gym.
You got to get me back in there. Well, I don't know. I'm a little too paranoid.
Well, not theoretical, like home workouts and all that kind of stuff. We talked about Zoom. We're gonna set up a Zoom after this to get you on some. But no, man, I've been, because I run in a fitness accountability group.
Yeah.
So all of those different type of things are being super productive in that. And applying for jobs, because I got laid off due to COVID. So that's a job within itself. Yes. So I've been hyper productive. And sometimes, because I'm laid off, I think I talked about this on the pod before, feeling the guilt of resting because I'm not working. So I've been producing and just doing stuff.
I swear that's a curse of America. To think that you have to be working and be doing something
positive. To be doing something, right? And then sometimes I'm okay. Yeah. But this weekend, I'm going to intentionally get wrapped up in rest and just getting lost in film and media. And
all right, so I'm holding you accountable to that.
No, hit me up.
I will. Don't worry about it. I will.
Oh, man. But this has been dope, man. Thank you again for sitting on the couch and joining us in the virtual living room. We're going to go to the final segment where I'm going to rant and rave a little bit, called A Greater Conversation.
Let me talk. Let me talk.
All right, y'all. We are at the point of the podcast where we have a conversation, a greater conversation. And this week, I'm not going to even make it real long. So let me just get into it. Let me stop doing all these dramatic pauses. Governor Brian Kemp, he has been doing a piss poor job of administering what is supposed to be governance over the state of Georgia. He opened up, Georgia's one of the first states to open up, and unnecessarily so. He did it with non-essential businesses, not requiring people to wear masks, all these kind of things, very lenient measures in terms of safety during this pandemic. However, the mayor of the city of Atlanta, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, has been very adamant about the need to further protect its citizens, to put in or implement rather measures that will make sure that everyone is safe, and that if we're opening up in a way that does not further spread COVID-19, and does not further affect not only those who are most vulnerable, our senior citizens, our children, people who have immune disorders and all that different kind of stuff, but also just not further the spread amongst people in general. We all know that while Atlanta itself is a city, it serves as the bedrock for a greater metropolis. The metro area is huge. Like, I live in Cobb County, which is a suburb of Atlanta. But when I was working, I would drive into Midtown every single day. So I spent a majority of my day in Midtown. So if I was going to lunch or getting a cup of coffee or running an errand, it typically happened somewhere in the city of Atlanta before I made it all the way to my house, right? So having those measures in place, although technically I'm not a citizen of the city of Atlanta, I don't live in the city proper, it still would have affected me in some regard if I was still going to work because, right, I would have to be within the city and respect the laws and the ordinances that was established by that administration. Governor Kemp has went so far as to try to sue Mayor Bottoms because she is pretty much disregarding his leniency toward some of this the safety measures for this pandemic, and she's just like, no, not here for it at all. People need to wear masks, this, and the third. So she's trying to mandate it. So he's pretty much trying to, sling his stuff on the table and be like, my governor's rule trumps everything that you can do. It outrides and outweighs, your laws, your mandates, this, and the third, right? And while that is true, I also believe that it is incumbent upon local leaders to oftentimes establish what is best for the citizens within that specific area. Not to say that there should not be any governance from state officials and government. However, Governor Kemp has an entire state to worry about. And sometimes his or a governor's perspective around a specific city or a specific area is not as well versed or in tune as maybe that mayor or that city council or that board of commissioners is, right? So, what does all of this matter, and why are we ranting and raving about this? Well, because Governor Kemp has decided to sue Keisha, um, because she's like is adamant and bullish about people being safe and requiring and mandating that people are wearing masks. Like, her family has all been exposed to COVID-19. She tested positive for COVID-19. I think others in her family has as well. So she's been doing what she's supposed to be doing for as far as what we know, right? She was asymptomatic, but when she got tested, she tested positive. And that was one of the reasons why she is also so adamant about people wearing masks, because there could be people out here every day in grocery stores, in Home Depot, in Target, or wherever they're going, who could be asymptomatic, do not know that they have anything. And because they don't have any symptoms, are not getting tested, but are out here maskless and spreading it. Like, wearing a mask, if everyone wore a mask, right, it would greatly like drop the numbers of people who are affected and people who are contracting this disease. Other countries have proved it. I don't know why we're so dumb to where we're up here fighting for the right to not wear a mask. At what point did the economy and at what point did any of this other foolishness get so much more important that it is trumped or outweighed the humanity of us, right? Why, how has it become so important that we've disregarded human life? Even in terms of sending our children back to school. If a board of educational directors, right, board of directors or school board members rather, can get together via Zoom because they think it is too unsafe to meet in person, those same school board members can now say, oh, but we're going to send all of our children to school. What if it's too dangerous for you, then how on earth is it safe at all for our children? Children are disgusting. They cough with their little mouths open. They touch anything. They put anything in their mouths. That's a whole nother conversation. But what I am saying is though this lawsuit is so stupid. It is a stroke of his ego, and his ego has been bruised. Why? Because Keisha is the celebrity. Because the people in Atlanta listen to her, and they are disregarding him while he has his things in place. There are a lot of people within the city, business owners, who are listening to the mayor because of their respect and their regard for who she is and the administration that she runs, right? So he is even asking that she not be able to do press conference. Like, this is all in the lawsuit, that she's not able to do. Pretty much he wants her to shut up and behave. And the reason why I know that this is racist, and the reason why that I know this is also misogynistic, because there are other city leaders, Savannah, Augusta, Decatur, city mayors, right, who have also mandated that masks are required in their cities. But Keisha Lance Bottoms is the only one who is being sued. What is the only difference here between them? That she's black. There are other black mayors on that list I just called out, but she's also a woman. So how dare he be undermined by a black person? Oh, let alone a black woman. He cannot take the dagger to his ego. But what I want to let you know is that it's not about ego at this point. It is about lives. And what you are showing, what you showed when you cheated to win this election from Stacey Abrams, is that you are the idiot and the stupid person that we all thought that you were. And it is unnecessary that you are willing to die on this hill, the same hill that Terry Crews is dying on, the same hill that your lovely executive leader, President Donald Trump, is dying on, that you don't think this is real, that you're not taking this serious enough to know that the cases in Georgia are increasing. People are really dying. People are really sick out here. And the fact that you are so caught up in playing politics and being the biggest and the baddest, that you're willing to risk it all just so that you can be the big bad person in charge. Man, get out of here. If that ain't white privilege at its finest, I don't know what it is. Leave that woman alone. And if you're going to keep that energy, keep that same energy for every other mayor who is disregarding your mandates. Why are you pointing out Keisha? So only a few things that I can point out, and that's just because she's black and that's because she's a woman. And you cannot fathom being less popular or less powerful than a black woman. But let me let you know that no one is going willing to risk their lives just to succumb, right, to what you have suggested. I hope that when it is time for you to get reelected, that you are voted out of there with a vengeance. Okay, I really do. Because it makes absolutely no sense of how you've handled this matter. You handling this matter has shown that you are incompetent and you are not equipped to do the job. My 9-year-old son probably could do a better job of managing this pandemic than you have proven in this moment. Okay. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it does not make sense. And this is to any other ridiculous white man who wants to not adhere or is threatened. That's the word that I want to use. That is threatened by the power and the grace and the beauty of a black woman. I told y'all last week that black women were our first superheroes, and we have to respect them, and we have to honor them, and we have to do a better job. We talked about it in the beginning of this freaking podcast. We talk about Meg. We have to do a better job of protecting them. And part of that is standing up to this kind of misogynistic and sexist behavior that says that I will endanger other people just so I can see this woman lose. Matter of fact, I'm going to sue her, the only one that I'm going to sue, and I'm going to make sure that in that lawsuit that she has to shut up and do what I say. No, we are far beyond those times, and you do not have the right And this is to any, like I said, it's to any other white man who feels like they can silence that of a black woman just because you feel threatened or intimidated because you don't have the balls to really do what is supposed to be done. Get over yourself. If you're not educated enough, that's your fault. If you are not well versed enough in what's going on, that's your issue. If you don't have the experience, that's your fault. You decided to run this race. You decided to get in this thing the way you got in it. And now you have to deal with the consequences of actually being the governor and actually administering in a way that will benefit all people, not just your cronies and not just the people who look like you, but every single person. Black and brown people are proportionally more affected. We talked about it in the episode today, more affected by this disease because of the lack of resources, because of the lack of access to health care and health insurance and money and income that would allow them to be tested and to actually have a job that will make them work from home. A lot of black and brown people are working quote unquote essential jobs because these are the jobs that they have based on a litany of systemic issues that have affected these communities for centuries on end. And here you are being so ignorant to say that masks aren't even mandated. A very simple principle about wearing a freaking mask in public so that others will have a lower chance of contracting a disease that has no cure, that has no vaccine, and is showing no, at no point it is showing that it's going to slow down. But no, masks aren't important. Get the heck up out of here and go on somewhere else with that because you can miss me with it. And that concludes another episode of the Jigsaw. Man, I'm infuriated by it because there are so many like underlying issues in what he's trying to do. And it's just absolutely asinine at best. So anyway, another episode of the Jigsaw. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Shout out to Devon Cross for being our guest again today. Absolutely amazing job, bro. Thank you for joining me in the living room. We're definitely going to have you back. By way of announcements, I do want to let you all know that the Sunday school sessions are starting soon. When I have a specific date on the first one, I will let you know. I do want to let you know that my workout class is happening this Saturday. It happens every single Saturday via Zoom. If you want to sign up, go to IamJoshRogers.com, click on the JWork, WORK link, and you can get information about the class and the fitness community that I lead. And you can also go to that same website and buy merch. I got merch, y'all. I got t-shirts. My wife has a t-shirt line that's on there. If you click on Asher Store, you can see that it's a line that empowers women, mothers particularly. So go on there, check those out. Again, email us questions, concerns, your blessed up report, shout outs, all that different kind of stuff. You can send the email to thejigsawpodcast@gmail.com and we will respond accordingly. Follow me on socials at I am Josh Rogers, RODGERS, and follow the podcast on socials at the Jigsaw Podcast and shout us out, engage with us. Make sure that you're rating, you're subscribing, you're sharing it, send it to a friend, send it to a coworker, send it to a cousin, send it to your baby mama, send it to whoever, right? And let's get the word out there so that we can all navigate this thing together. But that is all. I love y'all so much. And as we continue to navigate the ghetto that is 2020, now I will call it ghetto because it has been ghetto. Don't let life stress you out. Do what you can while you can. But whatever you do, don't you dare get caught with your work undone. I love y'all. See y'all next week. That's a wrap.